This episode is brought to you by RedPillThreads.com. They are a new brand geared toward fueling the anti-woke movement. They have some hilarious and edgy designs, which I cannot show you on YouTube because I will get my channel demonetized. So you're going to have to check out RedPillThreads.com for yourself. These hoodies, they are some of the warmest and softest I have ever worn, and the shirts, they fit great and are super comfortable. So if you want to take a stand against cancel culture and donate to some amazing nonprofits, this is the company for you. 20% of Red Pill Threads proceeds go towards rotating charities aimed at combating child trafficking and helping people who have been injured by the pharmaceutical industry. So stop supporting large corporations and start wearing clothes from a small business with a big message. Check out redpillthreads.com today.
The problem comes in when you have like political organizations like PACs, super PACs, and other nonprofits and other organizations paying these influencers to push specific messaging, and then these influencers don't disclose. So that's a big issue, and people don't like it.
All right, welcome to episode 180, Convos in the Pedicab. Got my buddy Tony Ortiz, the founder, CEO of Current Revolt. It is the Texas newspaper of record.
That's true.
Dude, I'm excited, man. You're like the inside scoop on like all things like Texas legislative politics.
Yeah, we do a pretty good job. People, if you care about Texas politics, you follow us for sure.
It's really good. You really go into the weeds of a lot of things. A lot of stuff. We talked about this earlier, how you don't really follow too much of what's going on nationally because there's so much of like, it just uses so much of your brain.
Yeah, I mean, national stuff's really boring. It's just kind of the same thing. Trump said this, Biden said this, Democrats did this. It's just really boring. And for like, if you're a Texan watching this, like a lot of this national stuff, well, while it does affect you, it doesn't affect you as much as what's going on at the Capitol right behind us.
That's true. And what I also noticed too is that a lot of people, especially on X, they get into the weeds of so many trivialities, you know, and there's a lot of infighting and there's a lot of minutia that most people who vote and live in Texas also don't care about. And there's like a way to contextualize, like, why is that important? How does that affect us as a voter, right? Because like for me, you know, I got involved because the lockdowns and the mandates were like hurting my ability to make a living driving a pedicab. The vaccine mandates are also a very sensitive topic because I had some vaccine injuries potentially as a child because I got a bunch of my shots bundled when I was 2 years old and then experienced a bunch of developmental problems that I had to work through in my life and still have to work through. You know, and then the censoring of free speech is just completely antithetical to what it means to be in America, and all these very, very big macro things got me involved. But there's just a lot more behind the scenes, and I guess I want maybe elaborate, like what else is behind the scenes to keep the machine working?
Oh man, well that's a pretty broad question.
Broad
I
question.
mean, you know, I think the biggest motivator and the biggest thing that keeps things running is just money. You have a lot of people with money that are of interest in politics and that are, you know, feeding different groups or different organizations to accomplish different things, and that could be good or bad. Every movement needs a good donor. I mean, look at the right. We have our own kind of like George Soros, some would say, with Elon Musk. You know, a good friend of mine, Nuance Bro, is talking about that quite a bit, and he was saying that, you know, we need good, rich billionaires to start pushing right-wing policies, and he specifically called out Musk for doing that, and Musk ended up being that person.
Which is pretty cool, yeah. Peter Thiel's also another one. I mean, I guess you have to worry that then there is a concern that like the populist ideals that got, you know, me and you actively involved in politics might get overtaken and might get hijacked by like billionaire entities. But I think that just kind of always happens, right? Like, you know, in order for an idea to like mushroom, you just need people with funding to help push the idea to the mainstream. And like, I guess the difference between us and the left is that like we still allow for open dialogue. We still have like the principles of like a free speech, the principles of being able to own a firearm, the principles of like being able to have your own land and cultivate your own sovereignty makes it a little bit easier to like hold these entities in check than the idea of just full-blown collectivism.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, even the right is not full free speech. There's instances of the right censoring people they don't agree with. I mean, you've kind of got, and I don't necessarily agree with this stance, but you had people calling out Elon Musk for censoring his people that were speaking out against him, right? Whether or not that was the case is up for debate. But I mean, it's kind of I don't think true free speech actually exists in its current state.
True, I agree with you. Well, I think that anytime you have a centralized platform like X, you'll never get true free speech. Like, in order to actually get something like true free speech, you need like a Nostr, and you need like a public-private key system where no one actually can deactivate your account, and it does require a little bit more effort to post and interact with the system. Whereas when social media platform, even Rumble, even Gab, even Parler or whatever it is, they still have a board of directors, they still have a CEO, they still have coders and whatnot that can determine like what gets amplified and what does not get amplified. So if you really want true free speech, like, you can't even be using these platforms to begin with. You're gonna have to graduate from those platforms.
Yeah, I mean, that's what algorithms are, right? Like, they push content for whoever generated the algorithm. You see that with like TikTok, Twitter, other apps and stuff like that. So
yeah. And you wrote a big article that
Which
got
one?
a lot of attention about the people getting paid to tweet and the influencer culture that's on the right wing, because people, generally speaking, associate influencer culture with like degeneracy and like OnlyFans and like stupid street interviews and just making filler content just to get likes and impressions on social media.
Going to city council meetings, raising hell.
I'm going to city council meetings to help shift a cultural narrative, because I love America, and the best way to fight tyranny is through comedy. Tony.
Yeah, but yeah, we wrote this article about influencers, and movements require money, and they also require cheerleaders, and that's what these influencers are. They're kind of glorified cheerleaders, but in this case, they're getting paid. And like I've said quite a bit, I'm in no way against people getting paid for their content. You're obviously, your goal is to get paid for your content through either ads or some sort of revenue, and that's the same for me. I get paid through people who subscribe to my newsletter.
Yeah.
The problem comes in when you have like political organizations like PACs, super PACs, and other nonprofits and other organizations paying these influencers to push specific messaging, and then these influencers don't disclose. So that's a big issue, and people don't like it.
Yeah. How did you find this information out, though? Because that's actual real journalism that a lot of people don't bother doing, and it also requires a lot of work. And it's not. I'm not going to say it's boring, because it's interesting when you find out. But the process of doing the research is boring. It's a lot of minutia. It's a lot of attention to detail. A lot of things that you're really good at, I'm not really good at. How did you find out? Like, what processes are you taking to like find that information out?
Well, finding it out's kind of the secret sauce, so I wouldn't really speak to that. But
Okay.
as far as like fact checking it, that's probably the biggest thing, right? So when a tip comes in, the most important thing is to verify that it's real. Like last night, I got a tip last night, and almost immediately I was able to find out that it was fake, or it wasn't serious, or it was incorrect, whatever you want to call it. But for me, with the influencer stuff, especially this story, it was getting multiple sources that are related to the same issue to kind of fact check each other and make sure that they're independent sources from each other, and that the information I'm going to publish is factual and accurate. And then, of course, reaching out for comment maybe to people who are involved. And in a lot of cases, especially with these influencers, you'll reach out to them for comment and say, hey, were you paid for this post? And 9 times out of 10, they won't respond. And that's what I found. We had influencers outside of Texas that were posting online petitions for people to sign based on wind and solar energy production in the state of Texas, and they were getting paid around $10 per signature, and they weren't disclosing this. So, and that really brings the heart of the problem, is because a lot of people follow these influencers because they feel like this person's political opinions are important, or they're genuine, or they're very serious. And when this influencer, whoever it is, posts something and you come to find out they were paid to it, it kind of reduces that feeling of them being as genuine as they appear to be.
Yeah, and it also seems like a lot of the stuff, I think that this is where like people may misunderstand you, and it's that like just because you're calling out an influencer for posting about a topic, it doesn't mean that like you're trying to like subvert like the ultimate goal. It's just providing context to like what the goal is.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that are being paid for to be pushed now that I probably support.
Yeah, that you support and agree with, but you're just like, okay, but it's being astroturf, and it's just
the problem is the astroturf, and that's the biggest thing. Propaganda exists no matter what, no matter where you're at, and even if you're aware of the propaganda, I think that you can be influenced by the propaganda. But people generally want to know if the person that's saying stuff to them or promoting something is being compensated for it. And again, I'm not against that. People should be compensated for the work they do. But I think the average person wants to know if the messaging they're hearing is paid for.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you have any specific examples?
Well, the one I mentioned was the the push for Texas wind and solar, Texas wind and solar energy here in Texas. That was a recent one. In Florida, there was a guy that was paid $160,000 to push marijuana legalization. Now he did specifically, well, he did put a hashtag saying he was a partner with an organization that he didn't type correctly, at least in one instance. So you could argue that he did disclose, but a lot of people didn't know. I mean, they just put that he's an XYZ partner for something, and they didn't know that actually means that they're paid. Other instances that are really common right now are people that are getting paid to promote specific politicians. During the Ken Paxton impeachment trial, influencers were being paid to defend Ken Paxton online. So you see a lot of it online right now, especially here in Texas.
But what do you think about Ken Paxton? Because honestly, like, I get the idea of calling out Paxton, but from what it seems like on the surface as a layperson, you know, Ken Paxton seemed like one of the more effective attorney generals in pushing back against a lot of the crazy stuff that Joe Biden was trying to do. And, you know, it did feel like there was a concerted effort to kind of rid the state of Texas of that figure.
Yeah, I mean, there's infinite good arguments to make that Ken Paxton is an incredibly effective attorney general.
I think I think he might be a little bit overrated in terms of like his effectiveness. Like, I think the attorney general in like Missouri is a lot. Andrew Bailey seems like he's a lot more effective as an attorney general, just based on what I see and in terms of the track record of winning. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that like Ron DeSantis and whatever was going on in Florida is a lot more effective. Like, the way they do things in Florida is way more effective than like how things are done in Texas, from what I see on the surface. But yes, Ken Paxton is still very effective in the context.
Gotcha. Yeah. So yeah, I do think there's arguments for how effective he is for sure. But I do think that also people have problems with maybe the infidelity issues and maybe the alleged corruption issues that surround him. You know, so I think people on both sides, whether you're pro or anti Ken Paxton, have arguments for whether or not he's an effective attorney general. Or not. Yeah.
I just think that the corruption with Paxton was very cherry picked. Because it just seems like there's like so much obvious corruption in like our political system. With,
so
like,
you think that just because he's corrupt or just because everybody else is corrupt, it's kind of fine?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, like, you know, the way in which Biden got elected, right, and the way in which a lot of Biden's policies got implemented, and the way in which the border was wide open, and the way in which the stuff is being pushed in the schools, and the way in which they tried to push these mandates onto people, and the way in which they try to like obviously censor free speech. Is, you know, anybody with half a brain could realize that stuff is very visibly rooted in corruption, and then it's like the pot calling the kettle black, is what it felt like.
Well, yeah, that's everybody, right? Like, you know, the Christian right, will constantly talk about promoting, you know, strong conservative Christian values, and at the same time they'll back, you know, candidates who have cheated on their wives or do drugs or whatever the case. I'm not saying Ken Paxton does any of this. I'm not alleging. I'm just saying there's plenty of figures in the conservative Christian right that are degenerates themselves.
No, I agree. I think generally speaking, when it comes to pushing a political message, you should. I think it's very important to believe in God and have a strong religious foundation, right? But I also think that that's private, right? Like, I think that if you're going to be a political person, like, you should be focused on like the politics of the issue, and like whatever you do in your private life should just be private.
Yeah, see, I think that's
unless you're doing stuff with kids.
Yeah, I think that's a libertarian ideal, all right? Because I mean, nothing
that
we do, nothing we do in private ever actually stays in private. You know, if I eat in private, right, and then there's legislation that comes out banning the types of foods I eat, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote against that, right? Even though I consume that product in private. So I think that there is this I mean, that was the argument for a lot of this trans stuff and the gay stuff, was that, oh, these things happen in private, so it shouldn't be legislated against. And
no,
it's
but
like,
it wasn't happening in private. But it stopped happening in private.
Well, nothing.
It was happening in public schools.
Yeah, but like nothing happens in private in reality. You know, everything kind of comes out, or you know, people promote it. Especially nowadays, people's sexuality is very much promoted, whether you're straight or gay. You know, so it's I don't know.
Yeah. No, and look, my view is this, right? Like, if you're like a far right, like Christian nationalist politician who's like, you know, whose whole identity is like cultural religious conservatism, and you're like speaking out against like gay marriage and like trying to like ban every book that like has any kind of sexual undertones in it, and then they catch you in the steam room at Gold's Gym with some dude. Like, if that's how you are in private, like, maybe just like focus more on like banning vaccine mandates. Maybe just focus more on like, closing the border. Maybe focus more on, like sound money and the implementation of like a strategic Bitcoin reserve in Texas. That's kind of where I'm at with that, right? Is that like if that's what you're like in your personal life, like, then just don't be. It's just like just don't be someone you're not, because it's just fake, and it makes people and it destroys trust in the system that we have.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I just think that I don't know. I don't know what I have to say about that.
Does that make sense? Like, does that make sense? Like, that's how I look at it, right?
It's a libertarian viewpoint.
Yeah,
I think you're a libertarian, right?
Yeah, I think more
see,
so
that's
than,
why.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think that like my views have just been aligned way more with the right these past few years than with the left, because things have just gotten so
libertarians
insane.
don't really have a choice. It's one of the smallest movements out there.
It's one of the smallest.
Yeah,
well, but it's
libertarianism.
gotten bigger though, because it's
Has
kind of
it?
like I think that a lot of libertarian principles have kind of
Do we have
overtaken the
any? Do we have any libertarian representatives?
in Texas? Well, Briscoe Cain has a lot of libertarian tendencies.
Yeah, but he's conservative, right?
Yeah,
Very Christian.
Right. But he still has a lot. But the ideals have spread a lot more so over the past few years.
Yeah, you can argue that. Yeah, for sure.
and
You can
like-
argue too that some Democrats are very libertarian
Like who?
with the sexuality stuff, the LGBT stuff. Let people do what they want with their sexuality.
Yeah, but it's not consistent, right? It's like
Well,
the
now
same
there's
people-
libertarian ideologies. You always ask a libertarian, like, what's the age? What should be the age of consent, right?
No, but that's a stupid argument.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they don't fuck kids.
To you.
Like, no,
Well, what's a
I-
kid? How old's a kid?
I mean, generally speaking, it's 18, right?
So then it's not. It's then you do agree that government should come in and say that 18 is the hard age.
I mean, but that's limited government, right? Like, I'm not like full libertarian on every single aspect of like the political spectrum. I just think that
Gotcha.
like a lot of my viewpoints just happen to be more, on the side of like letting people make their own choices.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it for sure.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. But like I don't think that you should have porn. I don't think like porn should be freely available on your cell phone.
Do you think it should be banned?
What's your definition of banned?
Like the way they're doing it now. Like I think Ken Paxton is putting in a. He basically said they need to do like age verification checks for porn websites. Do you support that?
How would that work? I want to explain.
It's in process right now. So like Pornhub.com
Yeah.
is banned in Texas. If you're watching this and you're in Texas and you put Pornhub.com in the URL and you're in Texas, it won't load.
But I think that's a good thing.
So you think it's a good thing?
I think
Okay.
look, because I think that like
Do you think most libertarians would agree with that?
I don't care if most libertarians would agree with it. I just think I just generally, as Alex Stranger, an individual human being, I think it's bad. And I'll tell you why I think it's bad. Because it's addictive. It's like crack, right?
Porn.
It fucks your whole brain up. It fucks your wiring up. It distorts your view of sexuality. It has a potential. It really has a potential if you look at it too often. And everyone has a different threshold on that, to alter how you connect with the person that you're with, which makes it harder to form long-lasting relationships. It makes it harder to like actually have families. It makes it harder to build the foundation needed to fight New World Order tyranny. And then when you completely degrade and dismantle like the American family, you have what you had 3 years ago with mandates, lockdowns, critical racist theory, and Sprinkles the drag queen coming into your kid's kindergarten classroom and reading to your child. So yeah, I think that a lot of that stuff. I think that there are certain tools that kind of promote a sense of enslavement, and that type of enslavement carries over to people becoming less free and sovereign in their choices.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, yeah, I think it should be. I think that like, in terms of age verification, like you also got to protect people's privacy, but at the same time, it's like if you got to provide age verification for one thing that's obviously bad, then maybe you're just going to be less likely to look at that stuff because you don't want to give everyone your data so that people know that you're looking at the shit on the internet. And then maybe go talk to a real girl. Maybe you could work out. Maybe you could lift weights and you could eat some steak. Go to a jiu-jitsu gym. Maybe you could learn how to grow your own food, shake your rancher's hand, buy some Bitcoin, and have sex with a real girl instead of like jerking it 1,000 times to some like fantasy on the internet that you're never going to actualize.
Yeah, I do support dudes talking to real girls.
I support that.
For sure.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
But I'm also not like someone who's, but with that being said, I'm also not someone who's like, oh, you got to wait till marriage to have sex with somebody, right? Like, I'm not like I don't have like puritanical views like that. Like, my views on that are still a little bit more modern than like somebody who's like super duper duper far right. But like for something like pornography, yeah, like that shit is like really bad for you.
I think the marriage or sex after marriage thing is more of a religious ideology for sure.
Yeah. So that's my view on it.
Yeah.
How do you think this session's gonna go?
I think it's going to be. I don't think anything's going to get done. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not good at predicting these things, so. But I don't think a lot's going to get done. There's a very, very, very important speakers race going on right now.
Right now that you're missing.
Literally
to talk to
right
me on
now.
a tricycle.
I'm missing it right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No, all good. And I don't think anything's going to be done. I think whoever, and they could have already. I mean, I haven't checked our phones. It could have a speaker right now, but I think that whoever is speaker is going to have a very, very, very bad time, a rough time. Whoever gets elected. I don't think a lot's going to get done. But I think that this session will be very fun.
It'll be a fun session. Yeah. I think that last session was a lot more fun and a lot more dynamic.
Was that your first session, though?
Yes.
See, nothing to compare it to. But it was fun.
Last
session was a
what
blast.
I'm saying, though, is that we were talking about this earlier. Like, you had the Transtivics and you had all these, like, you had, like, this, like, mega, like, barrage of wokeness just coming into the Capitol, cause all these disturbances.
Have you noticed
that happening.
Have you noticed the trans, happy hours and things going on? Have you noticed it's declined a little bit?
But I don't notice it at all. Like, I barely even see any of that shit.
So you'd
anymore.
say it declined pretty?
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming a triviality that, like, it's becoming a played out issue because it's kind of gotten ridiculed out of existence for the most part.
So you'd say session did a decent job at that point.
I think they did a lot better than they were given credit for. What got me annoyed about it was that it should have happened immediately, and they waited till like forever. And by waiting till forever, it's like now we're still paying property taxes, right? Like nobody's addressing the Soros district attorneys in like Austin, Houston, and Dallas, and like San Antonio, right? So like that's kind of what I'm annoyed by, or like no one's really addressing like how we can like kind of like have our own sovereignty regarding the border surge. So I'm like, it's not like that was obviously going to pass, I think, but I think that in delaying it passing, or the fact that like they like delayed like the sessions, and they had these prolonged recesses, like it just made it so like a lot of other things just did not get done which needed to get done.
Yeah, I mean, there's always more that could get done.
That's what I'm saying.
There's always
right?
more that can
like
get
it
done
seemed like
for sure.
the Senate was like getting shit done left and right and racking up W's, and then like the House just took their time, and then there were all these trivialities, and it like took days and days and days to like figure out a border bill. Like they had like a pretty solid border bill, and then there was like some Obama appointed like parliamentarian or like some shit like that kept kind of like stonewalling a lot of what like people seem to want to do that were elected, that were like in line with like what the Republican platforms were. It just seemed like the people that were like voting on these Republican priorities were just being completely like we're being a little bit ignored and disregarded by like the ruling class of politicians here.
Who do you think is like the ruling class in Texas
I guess like
politics?
the Dave Phalens and stuff like that, for lack of a better word.
Who else besides Phelan?
Phelan's a prime example.
Who else?
Who do you think?
No, I'm asking
you. No,
because
I honestly that's
you're the one saying there's a ruling class. I'm asking you who the ruling class is. You said one, Phelan.
Maybe Burrows, because he's the other guy that's running for speaker.
All right, I can
but
see that.
yeah, Charlie Garen.
Okay.
The guy who literally went on the floor like last year and was like, we need to have Democrats chairing committees because it goes against, like, he pointed out to some technicality and like decided to argue like over a frivolous technicality because I got conservative principles, and I'm just like, wait, why do you like here are my principles, and it's that the party that promoted lockdowns, mandates, the critical theory, unbridled wokeness, rioting, destroying small businesses, and censoring speech on the internet, like, why should they chair committees if that's what the Democratic Party's become? Like,
so that's the argument, is that we're a red state, so you should have red people chairing committees. So it definitely makes sense, and I'm for that. I do think that we shouldn't have Democrat chairs, for sure. But I've heard arguments against that.
What are the arguments against that?
Some would say that there are some good Democrats out there. Some would say that there are good Democrats that are intelligent about the committees that they're chairing. Like if you've got for example, if you've got a Democrat who owns a technology company, I'm just giving an example.
Okay.
And they're president of a technology company, and they're really, really advanced at that stuff, and there's a technology committee, and nobody else has this, it kind of makes sense to put a person like that in a chair. You could argue that, right?
You could argue that,
You could also argue that, well, he's a Democrat, so no. So I get the arguments for and against, but on a personal note, I am against Democrat chairs,
I'm
for
against
sure.
it also because the Democratic Party has gotten completely fucking off the wall, batshit insane, and hopefully, like, as a result of this mandate, the Democrat Party. Like, look, dude, I used to be a Democrat.
Oh, you're telling me this now for the first time.
You didn't know that?
No, I'm just kidding. I knew.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I knew.
I used to be like a Democrat. Like, based on how we're talking about different things, like, you couldn't tell that maybe I would have voted Democrat in like 2016 or 2012 and not, and not really align with like Republican values. Like, and I feel generally speaking that I'm pretty sane when it comes to like navigating the political land, despite like some of the outlandish like videos and whatever it is. Like, I think I'm pretty sane and actually probably more balanced and level-headed than like 90% of the people that you're going to talk to in Texas politics. I think that's true. What do you mean?
Maybe. You got a wild side to you.
I do, but
it's
I think
very
that, like,
unique.
when we talk like grown-up adults, like I can like articulate my views like a grown-up adult,
That's
explain
true.
why I feel the way I feel, and show empathy and want to listen to people who are of a different group than me, right? Like the idea of like not wanting to talk to your rep because they're a Democrat and you're a Republican, or
Yeah, we ran into somebody earlier about that, right?
It's completely.
We ran into somebody
on the way,
on the way in that they were trying to get tickets to get in the gallery, and they didn't have a relationship with the rep that was in the district, and they said, well, they're a Democrat, and it's like, I mean, my rep's a Democrat, and I at least introduced myself to this person, so
yeah,
it's I think at the end of the day, Democrats and Republicans probably do have more in common than what maybe propaganda wants us to think. I do think that there's obviously money to be made in politics. There's money to be made in media. There's money to be made in nonprofits and stuff. And I think that a lot of these guys want us fighting.
I agree.
I think that they want Democrats and Republicans and conservatives and liberals to fight. And at the end of the day, I think we want a good cost of living. We want a safe country. We want to be able to pay our bills and feel safe and raise kids. And those are, I think, things that everybody, no matter where they are on the political spectrum, can agree with. And then we get into the minutia stupid stuff like genders and other ridiculous things. And some would argue those aren't ridiculous, but these are things that, cause a lot of fights. And I think that people should talk more.
I agree. And that stuff is ridiculous, and at least that one minutia is not something that's going to be on the forefront anymore, and that's a success. Like, It seems like the gender cult has no real relevancy anymore.
Well,
Which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
I think Americans were
sick of it.
Sick of it, yeah, because there was just so much, right? It started off relatively whatever, and then it got to be a lot. It was a lot. I mean, it was annoying, even for the people that supported it. And you saw people in the gay movement that were fed up with the trans movement, right? You even saw feminists that were like fed up with the LGBTQ movement because it was just so annoying. You can be annoying. You can do a good thing, and I'm not saying the trans movement is a good thing. But I'm just saying you could even have a good thing, and there's too much of it, and you're just annoyed. It's just stupid at that point.
I think we're running into that risk of this happening on the right.
With what?
The Jew hatred.
Oh yeah, I mean that's stupid.
And
it's
the
so
Israel-Palestine conflict. And
I was telling you, yeah, like
it's
it's so exhausting. Like when somebody starts talking about Palestine or Israel, my brain just shuts off. Like I don't even hear anything that comes out of their mouth after that. And it's not because it doesn't matter. Of course it matters, and it matters to a lot of people. But it doesn't matter to me. And you can make the argument, well, what happens over there eventually affects me, and maybe that's true. But I just don't care, and I don't care to be educated about it. I care about what happens in the relative vicinity of where I live, which is the state of Texas.
No, my view. My view is the exact same. The only reason I have a little bit more of an opinion is because I'm Jewish.
Okay.
Right. Like if I weren't Jewish, I'd feel the exact same way that you felt. Right.
Do you feel biased because of the fact that you're Jewish?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're supposed
to feel biased because of who you are. If you don't feel biased because of who you are and how you were born, that means you have no connection to like your own roots.
Yeah, I don't.
And you have
I don't feel any bias because I'm Hispanic.
Yeah, because it doesn't affect you, so you shouldn't feel biased because this issue has no effect on you.
No, I'm talking about more general terms. Like I'm Hispanic and I feel no roots to defend Mexico or increase immigration or to bring in more people from Mexico, and I'm Hispanic.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a difference in that. Like
How?
They didn't kick Mexicans and Hispanic Americans weren't kicked out of 150 different countries and repeatedly genocided over thousands of years by multiple regimes.
A Hispanic person that maybe knows more about Hispanic culture and history would make a counter argument to that, and I think that shows your bias there, is that you feel a connection to Israel because you're Jewish, and there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But I think for somebody like me, like I don't feel a connection to Mexico in any way. Mexico's never done anything, at least for me personally. So I feel no connection. I feel more of a connection to the white guy sitting across from me because he's an American than I would a Hispanic person from Mexico.
No, look, I feel the same way, right? Like obviously, I feel more connected to like, someone who lives here in America with me because we're all Americans and whatnot, right? I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that I kind of like of understanding like historical patterns.
Were you born here in the U.S.?
No, I was born in America.
Let me give you a hypothetical.
Look, dude, I'm not like mad. I'm not like saying that like American taxpayers or truck drivers in Pennsylvania need to be like sending money to Israel to support Israel defending against the Palestinians. Like that's not where I'm at all. I'm just saying like in terms of picking a side between the Israelis and the Palestinians, objectively, that's my viewpoint. I don't think I think American involvement should be very minimal.
So let me give you a hypothetical. If you were given the option, and you had to press a button, and one button will disenfranchise and make the life of everybody in California incredibly, incredibly hard for the next 20 years, or the other button does the same thing, but it does it for the state of Israel, or the country of Israel. Which button do you press?
Well, considering how the Californians have voted.
Okay, so you answer my question.
Oh man, what a tough question.
It's not a tough question. For me, it's really easy. I would press the one that disenfranchises the foreign country. Not because of the fact that they're a foreign country, but because I care about Americans. I mean, even though Californians are leftists and Democrats, they're still Americans. The majority of them are, at least. So I feel more of a connection to them. I don't feel a connection. Like if the button for me opposite was Mexico, then I would choose to disenfranchise the Mexicans.
I understand.
Because I feel a connection to Americans. I was born here. I was raised here. America does things for me. And the fact that you were born here and you struggle to defend your own people, your own Americans, I think that's a bad thing. I think that's a really dangerous thing.
You know what? You actually have a point.
Of course I have a point.
I don't have a response to that.
Yeah, I think that's a very rough thing.
I do not have a response.
And I think here's the thing, and I don't think you're unique in this. I think that there are a lot of people like you, not just specifically Jewish people, but like people that have connections to foreign countries, China, Mexico, Canada, wherever it may be, and religions, of course, that feel more of a connection to that foreign state or that foreign entity than they do to their average American. And I think that says a lot about our American culture. Our culture's dead.
Tony, okay. I want to add to this. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I think that if you had asked me this question like 3 years ago, it would have been a no-brainer. But I think that because you're seeing so much of like you're seeing a lot of like the talking points from like 1930s Germany and like this type of like spurging becoming like a little bit more mainstream, and you're seeing like and you're starting to kind of feel that like, oh, I'm not like ever going to be accepted like as an American because you're a Jew, like you're just going to subvert everything that like.
Yeah, but see, I didn't even know you were Jewish till you told me you were Jewish.
No, I know, but I'm making a point. I'm just giving. Okay. I'm just trying to like make a point about like why there's a little bit more nuance attached to that, right? And I'm just sharing like a personal like observation.
Yeah.
And I'm not. That's all it is. It's me sharing a personal observation, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that like just because of like what I've noticed with the language that's been just the noticing of the language and the noticing of like how I feel like the discourse playing out, whether it's even real or just a bot infused algorithm. So a lot of the language and a lot of what I've been hearing and a lot of what I've been listening to has made me feel as though like, oh, like these people don't even care about me. Like they've viewed, no matter what I do and no matter how hard I try to like preserve the freedoms and liberties that come with like living in America, like I'm never gonna even be seen as like an actual American compared to like just based on like these people's preconceived notions and viewpoints.
Yeah, I think
so. That's kind of like me adding to it, but you're right, dude. That's a fucking shitty. That is a problem, right? Like, hopefully, obviously, you don't want anything like that to happen at all.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, it's a good hypothetical, and I ask a lot of people that have roots to other ethnicities or nations or religions, and oftentimes they struggle like you do. They would rather hurt their fellow American than a foreign.
I mean, I don't want to hurt anybody though. That's what
but that was the option. Like, you chose against.
I didn't choose anything actually.
Well, yeah,
you didn't give me a chance. Of like the
fact that you struggled says everything about that. For me, it's a second. I don't even. It's not a question. I would pick disenfranchising any foreign country over my fellow American. Doesn't matter what state they're from.
What would the disenfranchising look like?
I don't know.
No, I was just saying, like, what would it look like?
Let's say forest fires, right? Like, let's say, like, right now, you got the state of California completely on fire. Let's say you can press a button, and instead that fire would happen in a foreign country, and it would completely provide aid for all Californians. Would you choose that? See, you're struggling. I think that's a problem. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And I think a lot of that shows that, as a culture, Americans don't feel connected to one another. I feel like I said, you can have 3 people from Mexico sitting in this chair next to me, and I feel more connection to that white guy across from me just because he's an American.
That's kind of hard hitting, man. That's an interesting.
It's a big problem. It's a big problem.
It is
for Americans, because the foreign other people in foreign countries don't have this problem.
Yeah, and then
people
you also
you
know what, on the other side though, you also have people who've been protesting, waving Ukrainian flags and Palestinian flags, left and right, and then and you know the target, like it feels based on the social media landscape that the target is more geared towards like someone like me than a bunch of people that have been going to protests in various states and municipalities that wave Palestinian flags. Nobody at any of these protests is ever waving an American flag. That's a problem too.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, that is a problem too. And then anytime you go to a protest, none of these people are waving American flags whatsoever. And whenever you saw the counter-protests, especially at the college campuses, like the people with the Israeli flags also had American flags. They also had American flags too.
Would you propose banning foreign flags?
I don't have a problem with it.
Even the Israeli flag?
I don't care.
Okay, well there you go.
We're in America. It doesn't matter. It's a flag.
We're on the right way there.
Yeah, it's a flag. Who cares? Like, I don't give a shit. It's a flag. We live in America. Fly an American flag, like in the public purview. Yeah.
You would ban foreign flags?
I wouldn't have a problem with it. I wouldn't argue or fight or get angry about it. I think that there's more important issues to worry about than banning flags, right? Like that's a triviality to me. I think
it all starts there, doesn't it?
No, I think that's a triviality. I think that like
it starts with the flags, and then they come for the
they
food,
come for the guns,
they
come for the food, then they come for the like.
Yep.
If we had a resolution to ban all foreign flags in America, first of all, it wouldn't pass because there's such a cultural melting pot that nobody would. It's such a hypothetical, stupid. But that's the thing. Like we get so focused on stupid trivialities like this that we're like, yo. Trump won. We got a fucking mandate in Congress, right? The Texas House has gotten more conservative than ever. These freshman reps seem like they actually genuinely are speaking my language and actually are actually in touch with like the people like Andy Hopper or Shelley Luther, who like was an actual hero, defying the lockdowns during COVID, all this other stuff, right? Like these people are people that I feel I'm in line with, right? Where we can actually get meaningful legislation in terms of like preserving free speech, like adopting a Bitcoin reserve, like banning central bank digital currencies in Texas, and just making really solidifying a framework so that what happened these past 3 years does not happen again. I think that like that's more important to focus on than banning flags is what I'm trying to say. Like I just think that like
it's just hypothetical.
It's hypothetical, right? But I'm just like, when people see the clips of this, that's all people are going to talk about is that discussion.
Okay, fuck them.
Fuck them. Okay, Tony. How do we get a hold of you?
Current Revolt on Twitter, Current Revolt on YouTube, Current Revolt on .com, right? So just anywhere. We're mostly on Twitter. We're mostly on our website. So currentrevolt.com. If you're a Texas listener or viewer, we're a must follow.
You are a must follow. All right. Current Revolt, the Texas newspaper of record. All right. Thank you, man. Hopefully we'll see who the speaker is.
We'll find out.
We'll find out.